In London, tower blocks were built after World War II as an affordable option. However, with time they deteriorated and became a place for criminals to hide and thrive in. Redevelopers started to take over them to knock them down, but many of these blocks are still around because it's not easy to get rid of existing tenants. A block known as Serenity House will be demolished as soon as they manage to kick the remaining residents, who live on the top floor. One night, a teenager named Nick is running as fast as possible while trying to escape from two thugs. He enters Serenity House but the elevator isn't working, so he rushes up the stairs to reach the top floor. He pounds on doors and begs for help, but people ignore him and even double-check that their doors are locked. Eventually the thugs catch up to him and hold him down to start brutally beating him up. Hearing the noise, Becky looks through the peephole and learns what's happening. She tries calling the police but they leave her waiting in line. Desperate to help, Becky comes out and tries to stop the thugs, who easily overpower her and beat her up as well. Once she's down, the men drag Nick away as he continues to beg for help. The next day the police come to the building to investigate because Nick was found dead. Becky tells them she saw nothing and explains her wounds by saying she was mugged. However, Detective Devlin knows the paramedics found her in the corridor and he concludes they were the same thugs, but she says she didn't see their faces. Devlin is angry because nobody in the building will provide any information to help them identify the attackers and promises protection for anyone willing to be a witness, but Becky just closes the door in his face. 3 months later Curtis goes from door to door getting protection money from the neighbors. Becky insults him when she hears that the rate will go up soon. Neville won't let Curtis intimidate him and only pays to protect his wife Vivian. Local dealers Gary and Mark offer their help but Curtis just takes their cigarette and ignores them. Alone in his apartment, Paul tries to stay away from a bottle of alcohol, but in the end his addiction wins and he drinks it. That night Becky goes out and bumps into Jenny, a neighbor who leaves her kids alone to go partying. Jenny can tell Becky is judging her and screams at her. The next morning the internet service goes out in the building and nobody can send texts. Becky wakes up next to her coworker, who came over for a one-night stand after a party. They have breakfast together and discuss what will happen to their relationship. Suddenly the man gets shot in the head and his body falls to the floor as Becky screams in horror. In a building nearby, a sniper gets ready to shoot again. In another apartment, Carol and her son Daniel are shocked to watch her husband getting shot as well. The sniper continues to shoot into the windows of all the apartments on the top floor, killing several residents while others just get hurt. A few of them even manage to hide just in time. Soon the panicking survivors gather in the hallway but none of their phones are working so they can't call the police. Carol thinks they should leave, however the elevator isn't working either and Daniel points out that stepping out of the building will just make it easier for the sniper. Gary comes out with a wounded Mark and begs for help, only for Carol to remind him that they never defended them from Curtis so they don't deserve it. Violet knows some first aid so she asks for alcohol and some sheets to clean the wound. Then Jenny comes out of her apartment in tears because both her kids have been killed. An injured woman comes out too and Violet finishes with Mark before rushing to her, but before she can look at the wound the woman dies. Her husband Jeff is also hurt and yelling for help from inside, so Becky and Paul crawl on the floor to reach him. They guide him to the corridor and he has a breakdown when he discovers his wife is dead. Afterward they notice that Curtis is missing so Becky and Paul go check on him. She yells and knocks on his door but he won't answer, so she kicks the door open. They search the apartment and Becky finds him in bed, but when she touches him Curtis thinks he's being attacked. He pushes Becky against the furniture and takes out her knife, so Becky tells him about the sniper and all the dead residents. Curtis doesn't believe her and tries to force her to open the curtains to prove it, but she's afraid of getting shot. Paul hits Curtis with a trash can and insists he should open the curtains while Becky escapes his grip. The duo hides behind a wall as Curtis opens the curtains and his pillow immediately gets destroyed by a shot. After putting on fresh clothes, Curtis joins the others in the hallway. The group discusses the situation and wonders if the building developer did it, but they think the cops would easily suspect him. It's also not a random psycho because the gun is some expensive military-grade stuff with a laser sight. There are homemade posters with emoticons on the walls and the internet was probably cut off on purpose, so this is a well-organized guy. Becky checks the fire escape but it's too exposed. Neville thinks they should wait until the police notice the shots or the sniper goes away. However, Mark is in a lot of pain and needs a doctor, so Becky points out that if they can find a way to get downstairs, they could escape through the back door without being seen. Curtis wants to return to his apartment and wait but Neville stops him to remind him they've paid for his protection. When Curtis tries to ignore him, Neville brings him down with just a couple of punches, revealing he's a former soldier. Becky uses the chance to kick Curtis in the groin and announce he isn't in control anymore. The group starts trying to open the elevator doors and Daniel brings his father's tools. Jeff uses the tools and manages to open the doors, only to be immediately killed by a shot. Everyone runs to hide while Becky uses her mirror to discover that the sniper set up a trap. Curtis removes the gun before he and Becky take Jeff's body to his apartment where they also left his wife. Afterward Becky, Paul, and Curtis start to go down the ladder in the elevator shaft. Eventually they reach the doors on the ground floor and open them with the tool. The walls in this area also have posters. They try the back door but it won't open, so Curtis uses the tools to unscrew it from the frame. Paul takes it off and the trio is devastated to discover the exit has been blocked by a huge container. It's so heavy that it's impossible for them to push it. The trio has no choice but to return to the top floor. Meanwhile, Mark is still in serious pain and keeps taking medicine, ignoring Gary's warnings. The group discusses other ideas and Becky thinks someone should get to the roof, where they could climb down the back of the building using sheets. Violet says sheets wouldn't be long enough and mentions tying fire hoses instead. An argument ensues over who will do it since it's too dangerous and they wonder again why it's happening. Jenny looks at the paper with the emoticons and notices they represent the three wise monkeys: see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. She realizes they're being killed as revenge for not helping Nick or the police. Accepting her fate, Jenny announces she wants to reunite with her kids and enters her apartment, where she's immediately shot dead. Everyone is sad but Curtis calls them hypocrites since they all judged Jenny for how she dealt with her noisy children. When night falls, Carol says they should turn off all the lights and sneak out, however the others point out that the sniper probably has night vision. Curtis notices that the emoticons are on the walls but were also specifically painted on Mark and Gary's door. The duo claims to know nothing so Curtis forces them to go inside to talk. After locking the door, Curtis begins yelling at them for being careless, accusing them of killing Nick. When they claim innocence again, Curtis squeezes Mark's wound until he confesses. It turns out Mark and Gary were the thugs who beat Nick up because he owed them money, but killing him was an accident. They're speaking so loudly that the people in the corridor hear them and start discussing whether they should hand the thugs over to the sniper to save themselves. Curtis also thinks the duo should take responsibility and when they refuse, he starts beating them up. After a few punches, Curtis puts Gary in front of the window and moves the curtain, so Gary is quickly shot down. The other survivors freak out and pound on the door but it won't open. When Curtis notices Mark trying to crawl away, he grabs him and punches him before holding him against the window, causing Mark to get shot as well. After taking a sip of alcohol and dropping the posters on the bodies, Curtis goes back to the hallway and tells them what he did, defending his decision when Becky calls him out. Carol thinks it's over and tries to leave with Daniel, so the others try to stop her because they can't be sure the sniper is done yet. When Becky tries to make her see reason, Carol tells her she can't know what it feels like to lose a loved one because she only lost a bedmate, causing Becky to slap her. The group rushes to block the fire escape and convinces Carol to at least leave Daniel behind. Following Curtis' advice, Carol puts out an arm first and when nothing happens, she goes out. Since no shots come, she starts moving down the stairs and Daniel follows her out before the others can stop him. They rush down the stairs and make it to the back door, where Daniel uses the intercom to tell the group that they're fine. However, as soon as Carol takes a few steps outside, the sniper kills her. A terrified Daniel grabs a metal sheet to use as a shield and tries to escape, but the sniper shoots his hand to force him to drop it and kills him too. Afterward, Becky wants to try her roof plan. Paul tells her to stay because she's the only one with a brain and volunteers to do it instead. Since he explains he has nobody in his life, she hugs him to thank him. The group starts working on tying the fire hoses together but they pause when they notice that Paul is shaking. He explains he hasn't drunk anything in 24 hours and that's affecting him. Curtis brings some whiskey and Paul drinks until he feels better. Then Curtis uses a hammer to break the lock on the roof door. Violet opens it and is immediately shot by another hidden gun. She dies in Neville's arms while he has a breakdown. The others sneak to the roof and tie the hose to the pipes. Paul quickly jumps over the edge and starts climbing down. At first it appears to be working, but soon the sniper begins firing at the hose. Curtis comes out of hiding to distract him, yet it's not enough. The sniper keeps shooting at the hose until it breaks and Paul falls to his death. Becky has a breakdown and Curtis has to hold her down to keep her hidden. The duo sneaks back inside and a furious Becky announces they're burning the place down. She hopes that someone will see the fire and call for help. Since they may not survive the plan, the three remaining residents agree to have a last meal with some wine. In the morning, Becky and Neville start climbing down the elevator shaft while Curtis begins pouring oil on every apartment. Once the duo is safe on the ground floor, Curtis puts metal things inside the microwave and turns it on. He also turns on the stove. Lastly, he uses a lighter on some newspaper and throws it on the oil to start the fire. As he walks down the hallway, the microwave explodes in the apartment. A second and bigger explosion happens and this one can be seen from the window. As Curtis goes down the ladder, a screw comes off and makes him fall. He survives but breaks his leg in the process. Becky and Curtis use their shirt and belt to bandage the injured leg. On the top floor, the flames are spreading through the apartments, growing bigger and causing lots of smoke. Soon the building developer and his assistant arrive, but they can't call for help because their phones aren't working either. When they leave their car to check on the bodies, they're shot as well. However, this time the sniper is right next to them. Becky hears all the noises and makes Neville carry Curtis to an apartment while she chooses to hide on top of the elevator. The sniper then throws a smoke grenade into the hallway and comes inside to search the area. Once he's far enough from the door, Becky sneaks out of the elevator shaft and manages to leave the building. In the developer's car she finds a nail gun and takes it back inside, where she uses it to fire at the sniper. He immediately turns around and shoots back, hurting Becky's shoulder. Neville and Curtis use the chance to come out and attack the sniper, causing him to drop the gun. While Becky holds him at gunpoint, Neville unmasks him and they discover it's Detective Devlin, who says they all deserve it for not helping the world bring justice. Becky and Neville start kicking him while mentioning Jenny's kids, who were too young and innocent. Curtis tries to calm Becky down, telling her that she'll never be the same after taking a life. Devlin uses the distraction to tase Neville until he collapses, then he starts fighting Becky for the gun. She tries to defend herself but he easily overpowers her. Curtis also tries to attack him, however since he's hurt, Devlin quickly brings him down too. When he gets ready to shoot Becky, she brings out the nail gun and shoots him in the head to finally kill him. Now the 3 survivors can finally leave the building while hearing the siren of the fire truck. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.